Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So, Tarek and continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. I got some fun Conker news for you guys this evening, but it's going to take a long video to explain it. But just like this character here, I think I have found the problem as to why Conker's Bad Fur Day likes to crash, and hopefully that'll be very promising moving forward. Just so you know, I am using a debug, de-encrypted version of Conker's Bad Fur Day that is about 4 months from actual release date, giving me full debug control over all of the crash handling, so I'm getting a lot more data out of the mix. The other thing about this is that you can have real-time displays on all of the different specs going on under the hood, all the percentages used for the CPU, memory addressing allocation, as well as the memory used. So we get a really good look at exactly everything that's going on with Conker's Bad Fur Day. The other thing is that this version of the game is basically the full-fat release version with a couple textual differences, but otherwise it is 100% the exact same game. But the nice thing is, in my 2 hours of capturing for this video, I was able to freeze this game exactly 3 times, and 2 out of the 3 I think I caused myself, which I will explain later. What I'm getting at here is that I am basically in my own mind promoting Conker's Bad Fur Day to playable on the Nintendo 64 Turbo core. And do be aware, all of these tests are being done on Turbo. You'll get this graph for some of the video, but then I will turn it off because honestly, not the prettiest thing in the world. But on the standard core or on the Turbo core, when I try to play the stock ROM of Conker's Bad Fur Day, I'm basically almost always guaranteed some sort of freeze in this beginning area. It is very random as to when it happens, but the game will basically hang up, and no one really understands exactly what's going on here. This is going to be a lot of footage so you guys can see in real time what is happening, and I'll kind of explain the crashes along the way. Now, I will say in this build, when you're in cutscenes, don't try to push any buttons unless you're prompted. That sometimes makes the game crash immediately when you press the button in, which does not happen on the release retail ROM, so that is something that is just in this game that you can easily avoid. But you'll see here we have all of the specs on frame rate, the CPU usage hovering around 84-85%, as well as all the memory addressing, because it seems like Conker's Bad Fur Day is crashing due to memory accessing, and I do have data as to why that is. So hopefully in the future this will allow people to go in, take a look under the hood, and try to resolve this problem. Because honestly, the entire reason I decided to look at this is because I have the type of personality that when there's an issue and there's no answer as to why that issue is occurring, it kind of drives me a little bit nuts and I want to figure it out. And that's what I've done here in this video. So there's going to be a lot of data going on. But right off the top, using this prototype with the decryption, this just is way more stable of a version of Conker's Bad Fur Day than I've ever played on MiSTer FPGA, and I have sent this ROM out to other people as well, and they have also taken a look at it and reported back the exact same results. Areas that were basically guaranteed freezes now are extremely difficult to get them to freeze whatsoever. And with Conker's save structure, every time you complete something in the game, it auto-saves. So long as you bring up the MiSTer menu with the home button, you're going to be able to get through this game. I'm probably at level 5 right now. I've had all of 4 crashes. And honestly, I only probably lost maybe 2 minutes in total by doing that. So this is definitely something that, at least through my gameplay experience, you're going to be able to sit down and play today versus the retail game, which I would not recommend you try to play. So you'll see here in the cutscene where we hit the gargoyle with a frying pan, everything works perfectly fine. This is where it pretty much consistently freezes for me on the retail version of the game, and I will have a testing video showing you guys the differences in a little bit, probably next week. Now, we're going to do the exact same thing again, but what I'm going to do is hit the start button during the cutscene. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the core or if it's just this non-final version of Conker, but if you press any buttons in the cutscene, more often than not, you're going to have a freeze state like you see right here. The good thing about freezing it though is it gives us the entire crash handler menu. We can go through all of the different RAM allocations, all of the different reasons it crashed, giving us a concrete reason as to what would happen, and I will explain that in a little bit. But the nice thing is the game still sounds great as a prototype. Listen, and I'll be right back.
Plunger with dynamite. I think I know what's gonna happen now. Whoa. Yep. Fantastic. Let's go and get some shut-eye. Finally.
The reason I had you listen to that audio clip is because the sound quality is good, but one of the sound effects did repeat, and that's one thing I have noticed, at least in this version. Every once in a while I can get a sound effect to hang. It does seem to be at random, but when I say this is fundamentally a much better experience on the core, I mean it. This is definitely now a playable game as far as like the first 4 hours I have gotten through. 3 crashes in 4 hours is nothing to complain about, honestly, and what this is going to really lead towards is a fundamental understanding as to what exactly is happening here with Conker. And you'll see here I have fast forwarded this cutscene. Cutscenes are a definite hang point in this game. I have tried to get through this cutscene multiple times on my turbo core with the stock retail ROM, and more often than not it's going to crash out on me. Even speeding this up, it is a long cutscene, and I've been able to get through it every single time I tried to. So again, the stability here is much better, and if you want to test this for yourself and report back data to me, this is on the Hidden Palace. It's the October prototype version of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Just be aware that the file you need is going to be marked as .rom. Just switch that over to .z64, and this will boot on the turbo core and the stock core with no issues on the checksum whatsoever. And as we move on to the next area in the game as well, this right here, a lot of times when I would jump into the water or run up this hill, I would get inexplicable crashing, and I'm just not seeing that here whatsoever. I'm playing this game for way longer, I'm enjoying it way more, and I'm having way less issues, and I do not really know why that is. You'll see here I take a quick save just to make sure that I'm not losing any progress, and I do recommend that if you want to do this yourself. You'll see here we'll grab the hive, just throw it around, and again, this is another area where some of the cutscenes would start that I would always end up with crashes. Now that's not to say that this cannot crash. It will crash, and I wanted it to crash because I wanted to get the data out of the crash handler in the debugging menu to understand why it was crashing, because again, trying to solve a problem, the first thing you need to understand is why that problem exists in the first place, and that's what we're working towards here on Conker's Bad Fur Day. It's not like other games where they crash at the exact same spot and you can kind of point to what could be happening. Here it is a big variable, and when I hit that water there, it seems like splashing a lot of times on the stock ROM would also cause to some crash states as well. And that is the great thing about this version of the game. It is a complete build of Conker's Bad Fur Day on Nintendo 64. The differences are extremely minimal, and the full game is here for you to enjoy. And this is basically, in my opinion, taking another game off the non-playable list and moving it over to the playable list with asterisks. We're going to replay this same cutscene again just to see if we can get anything else to happen. And again, I'm just getting this stability coming all the way through. But we are going to get to a crash in just a moment, but again, it's going to be a cutscene crash where I put a button input into the actual game in and of itself, and there is a code that you can enter in the main menu where you can skip all cutscenes with a push of a button in this debug build. So I'm wondering if it is just some legacy code underneath looking for button inputs in the actual cutscenes to see if they should be skipped, whether or not you have that code active or not, and that could be causing some of the crashing. But you'll see here we get the hive close to where it needs to be, we pop it on the top, and then you get another in-engine cutscene. So 2 of the 3 crashes that I was able to get in my 2 hours of capturing for this video occurred in cutscenes. The nice thing is, the next time I go back through and don't push a button whatsoever, I have no issues at all getting through them. You will see here that we're just kind of playing around in the cutscene, everything is happening. I push the A button and I lock the core again, and you'll see here that the error is heap ran out of memory. Now there is a way to allocate Nintendo 64 memory, and by default it's basically just a pool, and the developer can allocate it however they want. But what that error message is saying there, once I hit that button, that the actual game could not access a certain memory address or otherwise considered the RAM to be 100% full. So that seems to be why some of the crashing is happening. All of the times that we see that crash, we're getting it out of memory. It could be that there is still a latency issue on the RAM on the DE10 Nano, and it's seeing out of memory because it just can't access that memory address, so it thinks it's unavailable, or it could be something else. And this is basically the start of a process of trying to make this better. Because honestly, you'll see here, we got through the cutscene a second time without pressing a button. I make so many videos, I tell you guys the news, but I figured I could do something, and I could help bring one more game playable to MiSTer FPGA on the Nintendo 64 side of things. So I figured I would spend some time this week just playing around with Conker and seeing what I could actually manage to do. Now again, filmmaker, work in marketing, not a computer engineer, not a coder or developer, but I do know enough to kind of poke around the edges. And this is definitely leading us in a much better direction. And like I said earlier, the best part is this ROM is the full game. The chances that you're going to see anything different, you could probably play through the entirety of this prototype and not even notice you weren't playing the retail ROM unless you actually got to that debugger screen. And again, all of the cutscenes, if you don't press any buttons unless you're prompted, I was able to get through each and every one of them with no issue. Now, I can't guarantee this is going to be your experience. Every single person's setup is different, but the few people that I had try this as well were able to achieve the same result as I did, and I'll show you some other people's footage in just a moment in areas of the game that are extremely prone to crashing. This is those posers footage right here from MiSTer FPGA Discord. I asked him to capture this. This area of the game basically is a guaranteed crash. Hopping around in this water as the electric bolts kind of zap around, people can get this to crash extremely quickly, and this was the one area of the game that everyone would look at when new cores would come out to see whether or not the Conker freezing issue was taken care of. You'll see here Conker gets zapped, and that was basically a guaranteed crash on the retail version of the game. And if you can't tell already, that just isn't happening as consistently here whatsoever. This is way harder to actually crash this game than it ever was before. Now that isn't to say you can't do it whatsoever, but watch the memory usage down below, watch the frame rate, watch everything going on, and you'll see that we have free and largest free stats at the top as far as the memory is concerned. And in a little bit I will show you how that's allocated out in a block diagram. But at this point in time, without using this prototype ROM, you would have definitely 100% crashed the core. After 3 minutes, those posers was finally able to get it to crash, and that is such a fundamental improvement. You would not be jumping around in that water for that long doing what he did. It was basically trying to get the game to crash. If you just play the game as it normally should be played, you probably will now not see a crash in that section of the game. And that was pretty much consistent across the board for the entirety of my experience so far with this version of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Trying to get it to do something it's not supposed to do was exceedingly hard, and honestly, as I was capturing the footage and playing the game, I stopped thinking about the crashes as much and just realized I was having fun. I wasn't thinking about how it would appear on video. I was just playing Conker's Bad Fur Day and enjoying myself, and that's really what we want to have here. Now this is still basically day one stuff. It is possible 8-10 hours into the game there is some random crash in a cutscene that will never be able to be bypassed. We're going to look at it though, and I'm sure I will find out more information after this video goes live. There'll be a lot more people testing for me and everyone else as well. But so far, again, I'm putting this in the playable category. It is just such a better experience than we've ever had for Conker before, and that is great because while I don't think it's the greatest game on Nintendo 64, I would definitely put it in the top 15. But I'm going to give you one more sound sample, an instance where there isn't a hung sound effect. Listen to the quality on this prototype ROM, and I'll be back to show you some more debugging. Amazing music, and I love those little cheeses there, but honestly it might be the most annoying part of the entire game, trying to get 3 of those cheeses over to the rat, which you'll see in just a moment. Now when you die, you load into the death area the first time, and this again was 100% stable. When I would play the retail ROM on the normal core or the turbo core, this was another area of the game where it was very prone to crashing for me, but because it is random, maybe it wasn't the area that affected you so much. But pretty much when I would die the first time on a fresh save, it would be like a 50-50 coin flip shot whether or not I could actually get through this cutscene with the game not crashing. Now I basically just kept a new game, went in and killed myself immediately every single time I could to see whether or not I could get through this, and 10 out of 10 times, it was a big time waste, trust me. This cutscene played totally normal, I had no issues with it whatsoever, everything just worked. And that's what I'm finding with this prototype debug decryption version of Conker. It is just doing things that the standard issue game will not do on the core. And when those posers tested that crash area in the electric bolt water, they also did it on the normal core as well, and they had the exact same result, which was basically that it was extremely difficult to actually get the game to hang. So this seems to be something on the game file side of things that is working better in both the standard core and the turbo core. I just played the turbo core to give this the best possible shot at performing the way that the original developers intended it to do on original hardware. And again, with this cutscene, I did trim it for size and just basically runtime, but otherwise, this was 100% no issues whatsoever. I would have had no idea I was playing anything other than real Nintendo 64 hardware. And jumping back into the game here as well, we can just keep moving on. And this is the fun part of this for me. There is a problem somewhere in Conker that keeps it from playing well on the core. And in this version of the game, I'm finding much more stability, and I'm also getting all of that debug information out with the crash handler that hopefully I can now share around, and maybe somebody smarter than me can understand what's going on and how we could potentially fix it. In the meantime, we do have this prototype version, which is basically the complete game with a few changes, and it is running to the point in time where I would say just go ahead and play Conker's Bad Fur Day on the Nintendo 64 core. You should be totally fine. Just make sure that you save often in the MiSTer FPGA menu by bringing up the home menu with autosave on. It'll save everything for you, and if you do get a crash, just jump right back in. And honestly, 90 seconds of gameplay you lost, that's not that big of a deal because this has a lot of good save flags in it, basically protecting you from around those crashes. And the crashes are very interesting as well, and I wish they happened a few more times, at least for me, because we get two exact messages when we do crash: heap ran out of memory and CPU halt. Now, heap is basically a memory allocation style for the Nintendo 64, and I did pull some SDK documents and some other developer information, and basically the developers can lay up the memory allocation and pool however they want. Nintendo left it to the developers to kind of decide how that is, but there is a heap as far as the memory structure works from Nintendo, and it seems like maybe that heap is slightly too small in spots for it to be able to write to the correct address. That's at least a presumption. The CPU halt status might just be that it's trying to jump to an area in memory that is either corrupted, not filled with what it needs, or not filled whatsoever. That might be why the CPU halts, because it's trying to look for its next step in the instructions, and because it's not receiving the correct or any data from RAM, it doesn't know what to do, so the program just halts upon that absence of data or the incorrect data. But this will be useful information for people to poke through and to try to better understand. But again, in the retail version of this game, this cutscene was an absolute killer for me. Like 7 out of 10 times it would just hang here. And now with a lot of save file shuffling to get back to this area and to run this cutscene on this version of the game, I tried it 7 different times, lucky number 7, and I had a 100% success rate of never crashing whatsoever. But the first and only in-game crash that was not in a cutscene is going to be happening right here. I will show it to you in real time, and then we'll kind of parse through that debug data to better understand what's going on. You'll see here we collected some more money, always makes Conker happy, and this was totally fine. It's actually a very weird and very interesting crash because nothing really seems to be happening. Not that that matters from the crash status, but it's just one of those things. It's not the type and place that you would expect a crash to actually occur. So we'll just go ahead and jump off the roof here. Conker's going to take a little bit of damage down to 1 chocolate bar chunk right there. And as we walk up here, nothing's happening whatsoever, and the game hard locks on me. But the nice thing about this version of the game is when it hard locks, it loads up the crash manager, and we can actually go in and see what's going on here. And we can play around with all of these different menus. We can look at every single memory address and try to find something that is going wrong. I still need to parse through a lot of this data. You can get all these different maps, but you'll also see the memory map here: red, white, black, and those 2 green dots down there. I'm assuming that red is in use. Black I'm white, and green I'm not sure about. Green seems to be the current memory address that it's probably trying to access and struggling with. So if you have any thoughts about that, leave me a comment down below, because the one thing I don't have is a legend for the debugger to explain to me exactly what that memory map is supposed to be doing. I'm assuming red means that that RAM is in use, black means that it must be allocated for something else, white is that it is free RAM, and the 2 green dots were what it was trying to either read or write from at that moment in time. But again, without any sort of documentation or legend as to what that means, I do have to presume there, and I honestly don't love presuming. I'd love to give you a concrete answer. But But you'll see here as the next cutscene plays as well, in the 3 crashes I was able to get in the first 2 and change hours of the capture, 2 of them were in cutscenes because I pressed a button and 1 just randomly happened. But because I had just unlocked that area of the game, solved the problem with the rat and the cheese, I had developed a save right there. I reset the game in the MiSTer FPGA menu, and it took me all of 20 seconds to run by and continue along my way. And now, as of last night, I played this game for another 2 hours, not for the video, just for fun on the couch to see how much further I could get. And in that additional 2 hours of playing the game, I had absolutely no crashing whatsoever, so long as I didn't press any buttons during the cutscenes. And again, I think it's because this version of the game allows you to input a code that'll skip the cutscenes. Maybe it's trying to read inputs, and when that code isn't active, it can cause a crash state. Again, I am guessing at this. Leave me your thoughts down below. But the good news is, if you use this October prototype version of Conker's Bad Fur Day and you change the file extension from .rom to .z64 and play it on the Turbo Core, Conker is basically playable. Sure, I want to get this to a situation in which there is no crashing whatsoever, and now I'm getting in some good data so that maybe it could be picked apart and better understood by me and other people moving forward. But the good thing is, I don't think anyone's ever tried this version of the game on the core, and I can tell you right now, if you do nothing else other than hit start and start playing the game, you're going to find a very playable Conker's Bad Fur Day for Nintendo 64 on the MiSTer FPGA core, and that is way less than shitty like you're seeing here in this level. So this is good news. I'm definitely going to be working on this moving forward. It might not be weeks, months, or who knows the next time I'll have an update on this, but going through this area of the game, going through the entire game on this version, not only do I get good debug information out as to what's happening, I get a Conker's Bad Fur Day that I recommend to you. You should start playing today. Sure that if you have any comments, leave them down below, but we're done. Conker's going to play Game Boy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.